Youngspiration duos appeal hearing over disqualifications. War of words heats up over new air traffic control system. And scores dead in construction disaster in Jiangxi.
Good evening. An appeal by Youngspiration pair Sixtus Leung and Yao Wai-ching was heard today against their disqualification as lawmakers. Their lawyers argued the court should not have interfered with LegCo's internal affairs prematurely. But as Adam Hsu reports, the judges at the Court of Appeal did see the need for the court to step in.
On November 15, the High Court stripped Yao and Leung of their lawmaker seats for their failure to take a valid oath. The Youngspiration duo appealed that ruling. Today's hearing began with Yao's counsel Philip Dykes arguing the court's involvement in the case was premature, as LegCo President Andrew Leung had not yet decided on the oath's validity. He stressed the court should honor the principle of the separation of powers, which is widely upheld in common law jurisdictions. But the judges at the Court of Appeal reminded him that in Hong Kong, the basic law is supreme, and that a court has to step in because the mini-constitution is at stake over the oath-taking dispute. Hector Pun, representing Sixtus Leung, said that's the case only if the LegCo president has allowed lawmakers who fail their oaths to assume office. But the president's decision to give him a second chance is a matter exclusively within the legislature. Pun argued the interpretation of the basic law by the National People's Congress Standing Committee is inconsistent with the mini-constitution because it amounted to amending it. Chief Judge of the High Court Andrew Cheung challenged Pun to present solid reasons for him to say that, saying it would be arrogant and ignorant for a common law lawyer to comment on the civil law system. Benjamin Yu, representing the Secretary for Justice, insisted the court has jurisdiction to preside over the case as the issue concerns constitutional principles.
The government side will continue to present its case tomorrow. Adam Hsu, TVB News.
Meanwhile, the Legislative Council Commission decided today Leung and Yao will have to return in full the salaries and expenses they received since October. That means they each have to repay about $930,000, $95,000 in salaries and $830,000 in expenses.
According to the interpretation of Article 104 of the Basic Law by the Standing Committee of the NPC on 7th of November, no public office shall be assumed, no corresponding powers and functions shall be exercised, and no corresponding entitlements shall be enjoyed by anyone who fail to lawfully and validly take the oath or who declines to take oaths. We have a long discussion and we did not have a unanimous decision. But however, the Commission has decided to request Mr. Leung and Ms. Yao to return the monies in full amount. The Secretary will follow up.
To other news, aviation officials today again played down safety concerns about the troubled new air traffic control system. As Rachel Lung reports, that's despite a lawmaker insisting controllers told him that the system has experienced multiple glitches.
Teething problems could still be plaguing the new air traffic control system, which went online last week. First, a systematic crash during last month's trial, then radar losing track of a plane for 12 seconds 9 days ago. Despite the glitches, the transport chief today insisted the system was fine.
Even under the so-called old system, such occasional occurrences of flights not being immediately identified on radar due to various reasons. And in this case, it's not because of the failure of the system itself, but it has to do with the plane, sometimes due to reasons not because of the air control system, but because of weather or the conditions.
Pacific Party lawmaker Jeremy Tam, who is also a pilot, is not convinced. He claims air traffic controllers have reported system than the Civil Aviation Department is letting on. These include phantom aircraft randomly disappearing on the radar, shadows of single aircraft making it look like there were two planes, as well as aircraft disappearing off the radar several times a day.
If it only happened once, maybe it's a one-off incident. But if it keeps happening, then that means there's something wrong with the system within themselves. It's not about the radar itself anymore. It's about the computer calculations.
Responding to the lawmakers' demand for an explanation, the Civil Aviation Department said glitches may happen from time to time due to external factors such as weather conditions, but insisted its controllers were fully capable of handling these situations. Rachel Ng, TVB News.
Customs officers have seized 9 armored military vehicles at the Kwai Chung container terminal. The vehicles were discovered during a routine inspection yesterday. They had arrived from Taiwan and were destined for Singapore. Officers were trying to figure out who sent the cargo and who was meant to receive it.
Across the border, at least 67 people are dead in a scaffolding collapse this morning at a construction site in the province of Jiangxi. Safety officials say a work platform was used at a power plant cooling tower being built in the city of Fengcheng. Close to 70 people were working at the site when the scaffolding came crashing down. Reports say several others were injured. About 200 rescue workers, aided by search dogs, have been digging through the debris with their bare hands.
South Korean prosecutors raided more corporate and government offices today. The case is in connection with the widening corruption scandal that's threatening Park Geun-hye's presidency. The businesses targeted were Lotte Group and SK Group. They're suspected of providing money to foundations controlled by Park's close friend Choi Soon-sil to win government favors in relation to duty-free licenses. The Finance Ministry and Customs Service, which oversee licenses, were also raided. Choi and 2 of Park's aides were indicted last weekend on corruption charges. Yesterday, authorities raided the offices of Samsung and the country's largest pension fund.
Britain ramped up borrowing in its first budget since the Brexit vote. Finance Chief Philip Hammond said the country will have less money, more debt, and a slower economy as it grapples with the uncertainty of leaving the European Union. Alan Buknia has the story.
True to his nickname, Spreadsheet Phil, Hammond offered a dismal accounting. Growth will be weaker than predicted before the Brexit vote, and households and businesses cannot expect government handouts.
Our task now is to prepare our economy to be resilient as we exit the EU and match fit for the transition that will follow. So we will maintain our commitment to fiscal discipline while recognising the need for investment to drive productivity.
Hammond said the government will borrow £122 billion more over the next 5 years, $23 billion of it to be spent on rail, telecoms and housing infrastructure. He also announced the government is abandoning the goal of delivering a surplus budget by the 2019-2020 fiscal year.
The Prime Minister and I, Mr. Speaker, remain firmly committed to seeing the public finances return to balance as soon as practicable, while leaving enough flexibility to support the economy in the near term.
Hammond said that over the next 5 years, the decision to leave the EU will cause Britain's economic growth to be 2.4 percentage points lower than it would have been. That's because of uncertainty of trade with its neighbours. The opposition Labour Party accused Hammond of lacking an economic plan to counter the effects of Britain leaving the EU.
How are we going to tackle productivity? How are we going to improve our infrastructure? How will this country compete in that post-Brexit phase? We haven't got the answers to those questions. It's very disappointing.
Brexit! When do we want it? Now!
Meanwhile, Brexit supporters demonstrated outside Parliament, complaining that lawmakers are not acting fast enough to leave the EU. Alan Buknia, TVB News.
Also in Britain, the man found guilty of killing lawmaker Joe Cox a week before the European Union in June will spend the rest of his life in prison. Prosecutors called the crime by 53-year-old Thomas Mayer an act of far-right terrorism. James Aiken has that story.
The attack on the 41-year-old mother of two in a quiet northern English town stunned the country. On June 16th, Mayer approached Cox outside a library and fired 3 shots with a sawn-off rifle. He then pulled out a knife and repeatedly stabbed Cox while shouting, "Britain first." She was the first British lawmaker killed in a quarter of a century.
Thomas Mayer is a cold-blooded killer. He calmly planned her death, he lay in wait, and then killed Jo in a sustained attack as she went about her daily business of trying to help people in her local community.
Jurors took just 90 minutes yesterday to convict Mayer of murdering Cox and wounding a passerby who was stabbed while trying to stop the attack. Mayer, who will have no chance of parole, did not visibly react as the verdicts were read. During the 8-day trial, Mayer gave no explanation for the attack and no evidence was presented in his defense. During the investigation, Mayer's home and computer revealed an interest in neo-Nazi and far-right politics. Cox had been a prominent voice arguing for Britain to remain in the EU during a referendum campaign that focused heavily on the issue of immigration. The Labour Party legislator had also urged Britain to take in more refugees fleeing violence in Syria.
Jo Cox's murder robbed this House of a fierce advocate for social justice and a passionate campaigner. Her killing was an attack on democracy itself.
After sentencing, Cox's husband said the family will not respond to hatred with hatred.
We hope the country will also take something from this, that Jo's death will have meaning, that those in politics, the media, or in our own communities who seek to divide us will face an unassailable wall of British tolerance and the articulation of Jo's belief that we hold more in common than that which divides us.
Cox added that instead of silencing his wife, her murder had allowed millions to hear her voice. James Aiken, TVB News.
And when we come back from the break, Donald Trump makes more cabinet appointments. Locally, 4 more historic buildings to get a facelift. And the Fire Services Department looks to ethnic minorities for the rescue.
Welcome back. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has filled 2 key roles in his incoming administration with women. One will serve as ambassador to the United Nations and the other education secretary.
Trump chose rising Republican star South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley to represent America as ambassador to the United Nations. Trump proved he doesn't carry a grudge because Haley has been a vocal critic of his rhetoric about immigrants and minorities. The 44-year-old daughter of Indian immigrants has no real foreign policy experience. However, she was highly praised for heeding the calls to remove the Confederate flag from the South Carolina state capitol after 9 black churchgoers were shot and killed. Then Trump selected Betsy DeVos to lead the education department. She's a wealthy Republican donor and a school choice advocate. She also strongly opposes Common Core curriculum that Trump feverishly railed against. Meanwhile, former Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson says Trump did not offer him the post of Housing and Urban Development Secretary, disputing a Wall Street Journal report. All he would say is that he's considering what role, if any, he'd be most effective as. In a Thanksgiving video message aimed at healing America's political divide, Trump asked the country to unite.
We've just finished a long and bruising political campaign. Emotions are raw and tensions just don't heal overnight. But now begins a great national campaign to rebuild our country and to restore the full promise of America for all of our people. I'm asking you to join me in this effort. Let us give thanks for all that we have, and let us boldly face the exciting new frontiers that lie ahead. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Trump will be spending the Thanksgiving holiday with his family in Palm Beach, Florida.
A car bombing in Turkey has killed at least 2 people and wounded 16 others. The attack occurred in a parking lot outside a government building in the city of Adana. Several cars caught fire in the blast that also left the government building damaged. Some of the wounded are listed in critical condition. Authorities say the attack was carried out by a woman, but they don't know if it was a suicide attack. The attack is the latest in a string of deadly bombings that have rocked Turkey for more than a year. Citing national security concerns, Turkey's prime minister has imposed a blackout on coverage of the explosion.
And back locally, 4 historic buildings are set to get a makeover under the government's revitalization plan. Nonprofit organizations are invited to bid and to run their projects at these sites. Elmi Leung takes a closer look.
This is only one of a handful of buildings of what's left of the old Victoria Barracks. The 3-story Roberts Block is a hidden gem, retaining its original Edwardian-style features. It is the only site on Hong Kong Island in the latest batch of buildings to undergo revitalization under a government partnership scheme. From today, NGOs can submit proposals on how to bring a new lease of life to that and several other dormant buildings in the new territories. These include the now abandoned Lun Wo Market, which was at one point the biggest market of its kind in the district. This could be home to a new restaurant, exhibition space, or even a recyclable collection centre. Also potential for the Watervale House at the former Gordon Hart camp in Tuen Mun to be transformed into a social welfare facility or training centre. And authorities are awaiting innovative ideas to make use of this former police station in Lo Fo Shan, which has been empty for 14 years. From the nearby hilltop, you get a decent view of Shenzhen, and that has helped officers monitor smuggling activities in the past. Authorities do not plan to offer incentives to those developing sites located in remote areas. That's because they believe the scheme is already attractive.
The capital cost for any remodification or renovation will be taken care of by the government. So this part of the capital cost, the NGO do not need to worry about. And then for the first 2 years, if they are not able to balance their book, we are prepared to give them subsidy to the extent of Hong Kong dollar 5 million.
Authorities have so far funded projects under the Revitalizing Historic Buildings through Partnership Scheme. Some of the notable efforts include saving the former North Kowloon Magistracy for the Savannah College of Art and Design and turning the old Tai O police station into a boutique hotel. Elmi Leung, TVB News.
The hospital authority is introducing a new program to cut the waiting time for colon tests. As Caleb Leung reports, patients will be offered a one-off subsidy so they can be tested at private clinics.
Currently, patients generally need to wait for more than a year at public hospitals for a colonoscopy. But the hospital authority's new scheme, the Colon Assessment Public-Private Partnership Program, or colon PPP, aims to change that. To sign up, patients need to be fit enough to undergo a colonoscopy at an outpatient facility. They will receive a one-off subsidy of up to $6,800. They will also get an extra $700 if they require polyp removal. Each patient will still have to fork out $1,000. Private specialists can also charge an additional fee of $500 to $1,000 per patient. About 75 private specialists have joined the program so far. The list of those specialists will be released next month. Hospital officials are leaving it up to the patients to decide if they want to sign up.
In our public healthcare system, patient demand are very heavy. And since our hardware and also manpower are still quite limited at this juncture, the waiting time at this moment for non-urgent cases is more or less up to around 60 weeks. It will be a voluntary program, and patients who choose not to join the program will continue to receive the treatment as usual in our public healthcare system.
About 8,000 patients on the waiting list will be invited to join the program, and the authority expects 1,800 to accept the offer. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Wu Sai-chun, a former member of the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, has announced his intention to run in next year's chief executive election. 57-year-old Wu said he wants to build a wealthy and healthy society. Wu also tried to run for the top job in 2012. Besides the former DAB member, retired Judge Wu Kwok-hing announced his candidacy last month.
The Fire Services Department is looking to add 200 new firefighters to its force. The department hopes to recruit more ethnic minorities. The move is aimed at helping firefighters communicate better with members of the ethnic minority groups here in Hong Kong. Currently, there are only 3 ethnic minority firefighters. The recruitment drive will end on December 1st. Those who wish to apply have to be at least 18 years old and permanent Hong Kong residents. All right, happy Thanksgiving, Chris. What do you have for us?
Happy